In the previous class, I had taught the adventure of the Christmas pudding, part 1, scene 1. Today I am going to teach scene 2. If possible, make a quick recap of scene 1 before moving on to scene 2. It will be a nice revision. So let's begin. Now in scene 2 takes place in the drawing room of King's Lacey. Mrs. Lacey is seated in one of the windows engaged in hemming dishcloths and talking to Monsieur Poirot. That means Poirot has already arrived at the manor house of King's Lacey. Now what is Mrs. Lacey doing? Mrs. Lacey is sitting near a window and she is sewing the dishcloths. Okay, the picture shows. Okay, no, the picture is different. So she is sewing the dishcloths and talking to the detective. An old-fashioned Christmas, well, nothing could be more old-fashioned than we are. My husband likes everything to be just as it was when he was a boy of 12 years old. So you want to experience an old-fashioned Christmas. Actually, we are very old-fashioned. My husband likes everything to be as it is when he was a boy of 12 years old. That means he doesn't like changes. He wants to stick to the old customs. All the same old thing, the Christmas tree, the stockings hung up, and the plum puddings with rings and the bachelor's buttons, everything has been continuing in the same fashion over the years since my marriage. So Poirot is saying, no, pardon madam, but I do not quite. There are silver charms cooked inside the pudding. So bachelor's butter means there are silver charms cooked inside the pudding. And we have all the old desserts, of course, the Elvas plumes, the Carlsbad plumes. So these are crystal plums available in the dessert shops of London. And almonds and raisins means kismis, and crystallized fruit and ginger. Dear me, I sound like a catalogue from Fortnum and Mason. This is a departmental store in Piccadilly, London. Fortnum and Mason. So as if I am sounding like a catalogue from the departmental store Fortnum and Mason. So these kinds of things are cooked in the Christmas in the house of the Laceys. Poirot is saying, and do you have a great many people staying here during Christmas? Oh no, it's really only the family, my granddaughter Sarah and my grandson Michael and Bridget, who is my great niece, and Diana, who is a cousin. So you have to learn these things. Who was staying in the family besides Mr. and Mrs. Lacey? Okay, who are there in the house? Mr. and Mrs. Lacey, Hercule Poirot, then granddaughter Sarah and grandson Michael of the Laceys, Bridget, great cousin, great niece, Diana, cousin. Who is Diana? Diana is a poor girl who is a widow and she is only 22. She particularly asked if she could come and stay with us. And there's David Welwyn, who is an old family friend. You have to learn these names properly for the examination. Now Poirot is saying aside. Now when somebody, a character in a drama, says something in the aside, this means that he is speaking loudly on the stage. But although Mrs. Lacey is sitting in front of him, we have to assume that Mrs. Lacey will not be able to hear what Poirot is saying. The audience is going to hear. That means whatever happening in the mind of Poirot. He is speaking to the audience. He is saying this to the audience. But Mrs. Lacey is not able to hear that. We have to assume that. Was one of these young women the girl who had stolen the heart of fire? Now, Poirot is thinking, now there must be a girl belonging to the family who has stolen the precious ruby of the prince, the heart of fire. Is the thief the poor widow girl Diana, who has asked to come and stay there for the Christmas? Okay. Or is it somebody else? Was it perhaps Sarah, who I had already noticed was blonde and quite attractive? Or was it Sarah, the granddaughter of Mrs. Lacey, the actual thief, who was blonde-haired and quite attractive? He was thinking all these things, and whatever he was thinking, he is saying this to the audience. But Mrs. Lacey, okay, will not be able to listen to that, although Mr. Poirot is saying this to the audience loudly, okay, on stage. To tell you the truth, Monsieur Poirot, we are having rather a problem with Sarah. Now, Mrs. Lacey is telling the problem. We have a problem with our granddaughter, Sarah. What is the problem? What is it that troubles you, Mrs. Lacey? Our son was killed in the war and my daughter-in-law died when Sarah was born. So our son was killed in the war and my daughter-in-law died when Sarah was born. So Sarah was an orphan. She didn't have parents. Her father was killed in the war and her mother died after she was born. So the child was brought up by us, by the grandfather and grandmother, Mr. and Mrs. Lacey. Unfortunately, Sarah has become friends with a man called Desmond Lee Watley, who really has a very unsavory reputation, has a very doubtful reputation. Okay. So now Poirot will realize that that means Sarah can be the actual thief. He might have stolen this precious ruby and maybe he wants to sell that using Desmond Lee Watley. And what does he do, this Lee Watley? He seems to spend a great deal of time flying around Europe. He never seems short of money. Always he is here now. Now he has been staying here all the time. Really, he is actually here in the house. Well, yes, you see, Sarah hasn't spent Christmas here for years. But this year, she suddenly turned up and said she wanted this Lee Watley here as well. So suddenly, our granddaughter turned up after many years and said that she wants to spend the Christmas this time with us and she wants Lee Watley also to spend the Christmas with her in the same house. Horace was dead against his coming. My husband, Horace Lacey, was not against his coming because he doesn't like this particular man, Lee Watley, of course. But I said, no, let us see him in our house and we will be ever so nice to him. And maybe then he may seem less interesting to her. Actually, I want our granddaughter realize that maybe Lee Watley was not suitable for her. But if we scold her and if we don't allow Lee Watley to stay in the house, maybe the granddaughter will also not stay in the house and she will develop a distant relationship with us. We didn't want that. We want to shower all our love to our granddaughter. And also we want to welcome Lee Watley so that our granddaughter realizes what is good for her and what is not good for her. We don't want to make any decision for her. Let her herself make decision about her life. That's why I told my husband Horace not to scold Sarah. Just allow what she wants, to allow Lee Watley stay in the house. And has it succeeded, your little stratagem? Has your little strategy succeeded? Not so far. She seems more under his spell than ever. I can feel the charm myself, and he does have some good points. And Poirot is asking that have you succeeded in your strategy? Is your granddaughter Sarah realizing that maybe Lee Watley is not suitable for her? So Mrs. Lacey is saying that no, I think that she is more and more under a spell than ever. She blindly follows what Lee Watley says. But this particular guy named Lee Watley has some good points. And what may they be? What are those good points? Well, he asked if he might bring his sister down. She is recovering from an operation, and he said it was a shame her having to spend the Christmas in a nursing home. So I think that that particular man has a kind heart, because her widow sister was recovering from an operation, and he doesn't want her to spend the Christmas in the nursing home. That's why he wanted our permission so that he could bring his sister to our house to spend the Christmas. I do think that was rather nice of him. Don't you think so, Monsieur Poirot? It shows a concern that sounds almost out of character. What is she like, this sister of his? So what kind of sister is this? And how is her behavior? Mrs. Lacey is saying, we haven't seen that much of her. Unfortunately, she has a relapse of some sort, and she's been keeping to her room since she came. And her brothers being so good to her, carrying trays up for her, and all that sort of thing. So she mostly stays in her room, and she doesn't meet us at all. Maybe she wants bed rest. And her brother is so good that he carries all the food, breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything to her room, and she stays in her room. But even so, I don't want Sarah to marry. But still, I don't want Sarah to marry that particular man. No, from what you say, it would be a disaster. But there are the carol singers. Horace insists on having them in every Christmas Eve. Let us go down, Monsieur Poirot, and I will introduce you to everyone. The carol singers have arrived. Okay, now my husband Horace wants those carol singers to sing for us the Christmas carols every Christmas Eve, 24th December. So let us all go downstairs, Mr. Poirot, and I will introduce you to everyone present. Lights out, scene 2 ends. This much for today. I hope you have understood properly. If needed, you can watch this class video twice for better understanding. I am going to send the question answers. Write them down in your literature copy. Goodbye.